The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHG. Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, April the 26th, 2026. Welcome to This Week with Mary Holland, President and CEO of Children's Health Defense, and myself, Polly Tommey. And Mary, where are you in the world?
Well, Polly, it feels like COVID times. I'm in Brussels right now, but I just got in today from having been in Italy. I was in Rome and in Milano with our colleague, Brian Hooker, our Chief Science Officer, and we're headed from here to Paris and then on to Zurich. And we've had really fascinating meetings with the press, with local advocates and activists, with local physicians who have challenged the narrative. And in Rome, we had the honor and opportunity to testify before the COVID Commission of the Parliament. And I spoke about what had happened in the United States with our committee in Congress, and also about what had happened in the US on censorship. And Brian Hooker spoke about the science behind what had happened in COVID. And it was pretty interesting. We can put in a little clip, Polly. Some of the questions were fantastic, but the people who were hostile to us called us anti-vax. They said that we were anti-science, and they did not ask a single question. And then one of them stormed out of the room. It was very dramatic, and it actually was really something. And but we will be submitting information to the record. And we did meet many really remarkable people in Italy who were very interested to hear what we're doing. And we were on a number of different media outlets.
It's fascinating to me how they scream anti-vax and then run away. They don't stand there and
Exactly.
have a conversation with you about it.
Exactly. They didn't have a single question. They just stomped out of the room. And I think that's the answer. It's like if you can't debate, if you can't have a conversation about law and science, then you lose the debate. By default, you lose because you won't engage in the questions. But the majority in that commission was really thoughtful, and they asked really good questions. And that was really satisfying that there were some really thoughtful people there. But the knee-jerk, oh, you're anti-vax, and Brian Hooker, one of your papers 100 years ago was retracted. It was just, we've been through this before. It was nothing new.
But on the whole, the people that you've met are very supportive.
Oh, we've met tremendously supportive people who are so grateful that we're in this together. I mean, one of the things that's so striking, Polly, and this always struck me, during COVID, but now too, I was just saying to you that, they want to know what's happening in the United States because all the policies are the same. What's happening on mRNA shots is happening everywhere. What's going to happen on the childhood schedule is going to happen everywhere. What's going to happen with pandemic preparedness, it's going to happen everywhere. And so there is this tremendous recognition that these are global policies and that there is a huge upside to solidarity. We do need to be working together. And, we're figuring that out. There's grassroots support here in Europe and grassroots support in the United States. But yeah, there's a lot. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity because I do really feel like it's valuable.
Well, it's just fantastic work you and Brian are doing, and we look forward to getting you back at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, so it's been an exciting week here, and for me, the
Yeah.
best news is the first news here, and that is Pete Hegseth, first of all, Secretary of War, tweeting out that the War Department is once again restoring freedom to our joint force. We are discarding the mandatory flu vaccine requirement effective immediately. And then we go on to Michael Nevadakis' article in The Defender, Major Victory, Military Ends Flu Vaccine Mandate for All Service Members. Pam Long, the Director of Children's Health Defense Military Chapter, said that up until this week, service members were still being punished for refusing the vaccine. She called the policy change a major victory for individual liberty, and it is a huge victory. It's been so tough for the military, and as you said to me earlier in the week, next up, please, anthrax.
Meryl Nass comments in this article, Polly, and says the biggest recent flu vaccine study was by the Cleveland Clinic that shows that their staff who took the flu shot were 27% more likely to get the flu than the people who didn't take the shot. So these are low efficacy. And the reality is, Polly, post-COVID and what we will be talking about in Duty to Disobey, the film, the Army and all of the military is having a terrible time recruiting new people. So this dropping this requirement is going to make the military somewhat more attractive to a lot of people. And I hope it's a first step. I hope they're going to drop giving the anthrax altogether. I hope that they're going to be willing to participate. They are an incredible unit for clinical trials. There are things that could be done in the military on vaccination that could be very, very meaningful.
Okay, well, let's move on to Jill Erzin here. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. accuses Congress of decades of failed policy, defends HHS focus on chronic disease. So US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. defended sweeping policy changes while facing sharp criticism over vaccines, budget cuts, and public health trust. We are ending the era of federal policies that fueled the chronic disease epidemic and replacing them with policies that put the health of Americans first, he said at his first Capitol Hill appearance of the year. There's quite a lot to talk about on him, but I wonder if you want to talk about that first, Mary.
Yeah, good for him that he went. I think he went in and spoke in 7 hearings. And much like what we just saw in Italy, there's such polarization, Polly. Some of the Republican senators and representatives were very favorable to what he was doing. And then the critics were vicious towards him. What he said is that people died of COVID in the United States at a higher rate than anywhere else in the world because Americans have such a high chronic disease burden. A typical COVID death was in somebody who already had 3.8 chronic diseases. And he talked about how much money we're spending. 90% of the $4.9 trillion national expenses on healthcare are due to chronic disease. So overall, I think he gave as good as he got, and that it was a successful set of appearances for him.
I mean, it would be really good if he or somebody could recognize how many were killed in hospital.
It was interesting. We spoke to this COVID committee in Italy, and our COVID committee in Congress ended in December 2024. And that's why we have our covidjustice.org initiative. There has not been the reckoning that we need on COVID, full stop, at all. At all. We do not yet have the truth being told.
Jill Erzin here in the defender. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. rejects blame for measles outbreak, calls for better care after Texas girls' deaths. So testifying before the House Committee on Education and Workforce, US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the measles outbreak began in January 2028 before I took office. He also pointed to 2 cases in Texas in which unvaccinated girls died following measles diagnosis. The families were treated as pariahs and were not given proper treatment in the hospital, Kennedy said. I love this article. Thank you, Defender, for covering it. Thank you, Bobby Kennedy, for bringing that up. I mean, it's so important, isn't it, Mary?
It is so important, and that is so much what we did see, Polly, that you did such a good job showing in Vaxx 3, Authorized to Kill, that people who didn't go along with the narrative, people who had not been vaccinated with the COVID shots, they were killed in the hospital. These girls were not adequately treated, partly, I think, because there was ignorance. The doctors didn't really know what to do. And Dr. Corey pointed that out. But it's also partly like, oh, you didn't take the shots. Well, then we don't really want to deal with you. And that attitude is unacceptable. It's just wrong. It's just wrong.
And I'm so pleased he brought that up for the Mennonite community as well. They deserve to have that spoken about publicly. Okay, Jill Erzin again. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. clashes with lawmakers over measles, COVID, and chronic disease. Senators from both parties pressed US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on falling vaccination rates and measles outbreaks during 2 hearings on Capitol Hill. People have been talking about measles all day long. While chronic disease is killing our country, Kennedy said, we need to do something to protect our children. And that's true, Mary. All they're talking about is measles, and
It's so absurd, Polly. It's so absurd. You know, most of the kids who got measles, they recovered in a couple days and their immune system is stronger. Measles is not what's harming our country. There are so many kids dying from their shots, dying from, seizures, dying from heart attacks, dying from myocarditis, dying from cancer. That is the real issue, as Kennedy says, but it's not what they want to talk about, or it's not what his opponents want to talk about. He is hammering on what matters, and that is that we're just not very healthy. And it's the chronic disease epidemic.
yeah, and I hate the way when they're questioning it's like yes or no, yes or no. Well, actually, some of these questions are a little bit more than yes or no. So I think
Polly, it's grandstanding. I read a lot about it here. You know, they just shut him up. You know, yes or no. They don't want to hear his answers. They really just want to preen and grandstand. And that's just it's an abuse of the legislative process.
horrible. Okay, Dr. McCullough, I haven't had him for a few times. He's talking about psychiatric meds here. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. called out skyrocketing use of psychiatric meds among Americans ages 18 to 34. The proportion taking anxiety medication rose from 8.8% in 2019 to 14.6% in 2024. In all, about 38 million adults now take drugs for anxiety, commonly prescribed antidepressants called SSRIs, carrying risks of side effects including fatigue, brain fog, stomach upsets, sexual dysfunction that cause many patients to stop taking them, only to experience serious withdrawal-related side effects. And that's not just adults, that's just the number for adults. So many children, very young children, on these anxiety meds.
And I do think, Polly, I think there's a lot of causes, but I do think so many children suffer from anxiety at this point. They are on high alert, and I think the screens don't help. I think the bad food doesn't help. I think the vaccination doesn't help, but there's a real sense of anxiety. So the article talks about, exercise, breathing, less use of social media, better sleep, more connection in the community. I think those are really important suggestions for everybody, but I do really feel like I think there's a book, I forget who wrote it, probably it was The Anxious Generation. It's a generational issue. It's not a minor issue among young people and children.
And Suzanne Humphreys recently doing a great talk for Children's Health Defence on meningitis, and she was talking about we must get the kids out in the sun at appropriate times and barefoot. Don't be afraid of letting your child go barefoot. And running exercise is so important. And with the screens, they're not getting the exercise we got as children, Mary.
It's true. And it's not like we lived outside, but your mother would say, go out and play, right? And you would play with other kids. You'd play kickball, you'd get on the swing set, you'd walk around, you'd ride your bike. There was like this whole culture of like sending kids out to play. And I think that with screens, it's really been disrupted.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, Jill Erzin, he's getting junk food out of the military bases and says we can do the same in schools and hospitals. Chief Robert Irvine and US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said poor quality meals in schools, hospitals, prisons, and military bases are fueling chronic disease. Irvine argued that improving food doesn't require spending more money. Look, he says we can do this. It's not about money. So thank you. Yes, please do it.
Exactly.
Do it.
Do it.
Brenda Belletti in the Defender here. COVID vaccine injury program paid for one death in March, but denials still topped 98%. Overall, as of April the 1st, the Health Resources and Services Administration has compensated just 51 of 6,944 claims decided with the federal government's countermeasures injury compensation program. The death benefit paid in March was only the second death benefit that's been paid out since the start of the pandemic. The program has denied 6,847 claims, and we know there's way more.
Oh, Polly, this is shameful. It's this countermeasures program is despicable and shameful. As Dr. Walskog, a leader of React 19 says, it's a failed program. It's despicable. It's just, I don't have anything else to say. It's shameful.
Former NIAID official who warned Fauci about COVID vaccines feared for his job. This is Dr. Matthew Mamoli, a physician, scientist, and infectious disease researcher who worked for Dr. Anthony Fauci during the COVID-19 pandemic, worried that he might lose his job and medical license after he questioned COVID-19 vaccines and mandates, according to emails obtained recently by the Epoch Times through the Freedom of Information Act for Press. Fauci again.
Yeah, so Dr. Mamoli is now working with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya at the leadership of NIH, and that's good. And as Jeffrey Tucker's quoted in this article saying, you can never vaccinate your way out of a respiratory pandemic. It's just not possible. And Dr. Mamoli, with so many others, was warning Dr. Fauci very early on to say, this is going to end badly. This could at best do nothing. At worst, this is going to make mutations that are going to be more difficult to deal with, that are going to be more harmful. And that's what happened. And Fauci should be prosecuted, Polly. He should be prosecuted. There are many states where that's already, at issue. We haven't had the reckoning that we need yet. It's not over.
Michael Nevadakis here. Cause for real concern. A Maha activist criticized Trump's pick to lead the CDC. This is Dr. Erica Schwartz. Trump's nominee to lead the CDC is a physician and former Coast Guard officer and public health official. In a video posted on Instagram, Schwartz said, "When I was a military physician, my job was all about readiness. It was all about public health prevention, vaccines, and early detection." Yeah, a lot of chatter, Mary, about this. People are very disappointed. They wonder how much Bobby was involved in this and why. There's just so many questions. I don't know how to answer that.
I don't think we know how to answer them, but I have to concur. It's a very disappointing choice, Polly. She's not our friend. She's certainly not a Dr. Dave Weldon, who we wanted initially. She's not a Dr. Ralph Abraham. She's somebody who is really from the establishment, who's pursued very establishment policies on vaccines. It's disappointing. It's not a good sign, frankly.
Brenda Belletti here. Don't kiss the baby. AAP pushes adults to get vaccinated before visiting newborns. Doctors explain why that is dangerous. The long promoted practice of requiring vaccinations for those visiting newborns, known as cocooning, is facing renewed criticism from physicians who argue it lacks strong scientific support and may pose a greater risk to infants, while even the CDC acknowledges its limitations. The American Academy of Pediatrics continues to promote this practice, but also not to mention that if you're granny and you're told to go and get whatever it is, Tdap, you could actually kill granny, the Tdap, before she even gets
of course
the
it could
baby.
kill granny, and of course granny could be more infectious to the baby. I actually really like Dr. Malone's comment here. Leave the cocooning to the caterpillars.
Right. Well, exactly. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It sells vaccines and it harms people. It's same old, Polly.
Brenda Belletti, Children's Health Defense seeks to upend ruling in high-profile vaccine lawsuit. In a motion filed in a federal court in Boston, Children's Health Defense argued that because HHS rewrote the rules governing the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization, known as ACIP, after the court granted an injunction freezing ACIP's membership and recommendations, the original basis for the injunction no longer exists.
Well, it's a good argument that we're making. It's a wacky situation, Polly, where this federal judge has suspended all of Bobby's changes on vaccine policy, and we're saying it's not really relevant anymore, at least as to the committee, because it's now a new charter. We will keep reporting on it. I'm not sure what's going to happen.
Defender article here. Bad Vaxx video game tries to inoculate kids against vaccine misinformation. So it's a video game billed as a vaccine against disinformation. It's drawing criticism from those who say the game is unconvincing and unethical because it trains children to accept a narrative instead of developing critical thinking skills. Packaging potentially harmful information in a game format can easily be used as a form of subliminal manipulation and censorship, says Alex Patakos, contributing writer to Psychology Today. That's awful. Nobody buy the Bad Vaxx game. Oh my goodness, Mary.
It's terrible. It's just a form of brainwashing through what they call gamification. So there's a pro-vax hero and an anti-vax villain. It's pathetic. It just speaks to how they're losing. So
But, I spoke to a mother the other day who used to let her first child watch Peppa Pig, and she said Peppa Pig went off to get vaccinated, so now no more Peppa Pig.
No more Peppa Pig.
You want everybody go back to the old cartoons from my day.
Yeah,
They're
they're
really
great.
pure and innocent.
They are. They're good.
Okay, there's no vaccines in it anyway. Washington Post reporting here, Moderna launches mRNA bird flu vaccine trial after HHS cancels the funding. So Moderna's launching this large-scale clinical trial of a shot to combat bird flu to humans after HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s department had cancelled hundreds of millions of dollars in funding previously committed to aid in vaccine development. And by the way, this is definitely an mRNA bird flu vaccine that they're trialing on. And also, Mary, just to say, I haven't really heard of bird flu that much while Bobby's been running the ship.
It's true. We have not been hearing our weekly dose of the zoonotic spillover from bird flu. But this is not good news, Polly. They just keep pushing this mRNA platform that we know is unsafe. It is never going to be made safe, but they're not giving up on it yet. And I'm glad Bobby took the money out of it, but I'm disappointed that they're still going.
Okay, Med Page today. Giving flu and pertussis shots on the same day is likely safe in pregnancy, says the headline, just likely. So the influenza and pertussis vaccination during pregnancy was not tied to an increased rate of adverse outcomes compared with pertussis vaccine alone. There was no difference in the rate of preterm birth. The findings may help clinicians more confidently recommend pregnancy.
I mean, is that a ridiculous article or what? You know, you're supposed to be about science, not it would tend to be healthy. It's absurd, Polly. It's just absurd. I think we've lowered it used to be, Polly, when, I think 30 years ago, it used to be that they would basically, doctors would tell pregnant women, like, be careful about everything. Don't take any medicine. You do be really, really vigilant because we just don't know what the effect's going to be on the fetus. And now that advice is just turned on its head. Oh, take an extra vaccine. Oh, take two at once. I mean, it's ridiculous.
But in my day, you weren't allowed near microwaves. So like,
I know. I mean, we were really careful. Yeah. It was really, really, they inculcated care.
ITV News are reporting this. This is my daughter died from a brain tumor after taking the contraceptive injection. So Kim Lewis died on December 2023, just 8 days after being diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. Her mother is among hundreds of women in the UK seeking legal advice after learning there may be a link between the contraception injection Kim had been given and the tumor that killed her. That's so interesting and so important for parents to know that out there, because many thinking this contraceptive injection could be a good thing. But please, like everything, we have to walk.
Well, Polly, I'm also suspicious. So yes, any of these things needs great care, but I'm also suspicious of the timing, Polly. This was 2023 that the girl died of a brain tumor. That would have been in the time period that a lot of people would be getting COVID shots. And we just got data today. It's not in our show today, but finally, the CDC has released its national cancer data. And they're now finally showing us what we know is that during COVID, the rates of certain types of cancer, including brain cancer, just skyrocketed.
Michael Nevadakis here. Gates bet $5 million on AI crops for poor farmers. Critics say it's all about profit and control. This is an artificial intelligence startup. It was founded by Google and funded by the Gates Foundation. It set its sights on developing climate resilient crops, but some agricultural experts warn the technology is really designed to make small farms dependent on patented, privately owned technology. Yeah, nothing good's going to come of that.
Nothing good, I'm sorry to say, is going to come from Bill Gates on health. Let's just get that out of the way.
Absolutely.
The good news there is that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is having to reduce their staff by 20% right now. So they are having a lot of troubles given the disclosures of Mr. Gates and his friendship with Mr. Epstein. So they are having to deal with the consequences of their actions.
Jolly good. Okay. Environmental Working Group sues EPA over glyphosate in oats, citing risk to children's health. So the EPA is violating federal law by failing to respond to a petition about how current glyphosate levels in oats are putting children and babies' health at risk. This is according to a lawsuit filed on Tuesday. So in 2018, 2 rounds of EWG commissioned lab testing found widespread glyphosate contamination of foods containing oats, including popular children's cereal.
I'm really happy to see this lawsuit. And there is a big rally at the Supreme Court on the 27th, on Monday. And I'm very proud that Stephanie Lucrezio of our staff from advocacy will be there. The rally is being called The People versus the Poison. This is about a case before the Supreme Court about the use of glyphosate.
Good. Okay. Well, Michael Nevadalka said grassroots opposition sinks bill to limit local control over cell towers for now. So after facing opposition from local governments and health freedom advocates and failing to garner enough support from Republican representatives, the House Committee on Rules postponed the scheduled vote on a bill intended to strip local governments of the authority to reject the installation of unwanted cell towers near homes, schools, and parks in their community.
Polly, this is a huge win, and CHD was really at the heart of this, together with other groups like the Environmental Working Group and the MAHA Action. This was telecom trying to sort of take advantage of a power grab. They thought that we weren't looking, we were on it, and we squelched that bill. This is a big deal. Until the Federal Communications Commission complies with a court order from 2021 that CHD got together with Environmental Health Trust, they should not be trying to change the laws to install antennas and towers everywhere. They should comply with that ruling that said you have to determine what are the health guidelines that need to be in place. So this was a big win, Polly, because otherwise we really could be looking at a much worse situation when it comes to wireless radiation.
Absolutely. And congratulations to our AMR departments. It's fantastic.
Yeah, they've done a fantastic job.
Okay, this is Undark in the Defender. Popular decongestant doesn't work, experts say. So why is it still on the market? In 2005, people stopped taking Sudafed, the over-the-counter nasal decongestant that regulators had made more difficult to obtain, and started taking its replacement, Sudafed PE. They would buy it and then they would take it home, says Randy Hatton, who at the time ran the Drug Information and Pharmacy Resource Center hotline. And then they'd go back to the pharmacist and say, this stuff doesn't work. What's wrong? It doesn't work.
This is just an article about how they just substitute something because the first one is really dangerous, but the second one doesn't work.
Yeah.
And they're still selling it. And it's ridiculous, right? If it doesn't work, then don't sell it and don't lie about it.
You're quite right. Brenda Belletti, will Maine become first state to block data centers? Maine could become this first state to do this. The rapid expansion of AI data centers after lawmakers approved a bill freezing new construction through to 2027. However, it is unclear whether Governor Janet Mills will sign it. The move reflects growing nationwide concerns over the industry's massive energy and water demands, environmental impact, and broader social consequences. And we have been discussing data centers quite a lot on Financial Rebellion, and it's shocking. Texas has one of the biggest amount of data centers in the country.
Yeah, no, these data centers really do like take up the energy and the water and harm the environment, and they're not good long-term jobs. They're actually very few. They're polluting. So this is a really interesting new development that Maine may put a moratorium in place, and that might serve as a, again, that might serve as a kind of an example to other states. So we'll see.
But there must be big money involved for the states. I mean, why?
Oh, this is all, Polly, this is all related to AI. This is about the explosion of AI. This is sort of the datafication of America. This relates back to the towers and the antennas. It's about collecting more and more and more and more data and then analyzing it in some way. And so I think, yeah, it's a good thing to take a pause. And it's like, do we want 6G, 7G? Do we want every aspect of our life to be memorialized all the time? I certainly don't. So
no, absolutely not. Okay, well, that's our news for the week. There's lots of good things that just happened.
Yeah.
But also very exciting, everybody. So now on dutytodisobeyfilm.com, that's the website, dutytodisobeyfilm.com. Now we have over 120 theatres up, ready to go for one night only on the 30th of June this year, obviously on 30th of June. You go on the site and you press on the button, you put your state or your area in, and up will come the theatres around you. Now, if they're not there, contact the team and they will help you try to find one. But we need to be tipping these theatres soon. We're not using the same company. So if you all think, I can't do that again, we're not using that company anymore. Okay, so this is going to be much smoother. But I'm just going to read you out now a few places. You need to book your seats there soon so we can flip that theatre for duty to disobey. Sedona in Arizona, Sarasota in Florida, Greenville in South Carolina, Westbrook in Maine, Rochester, New York, Providence, Rhode Island, Simsbury, Connecticut, Wilmington, North Carolina, Portland, Oregon, Waterbury, Connecticut. Those are critical theatres at the moment. So if you can get in there, get your tickets now, and we'll tip that theatre and then we're good to go for that night. And it'll be so good for us all to get together again. I mean, this is one night. I'm going to be in the Cedar Park one here in Austin. So we've already got that one going. So
I'm working on one in Ithaca, New York. I happen to be in Ithaca on June 30th. So we're working on one. We'll get that on the list.
Yes, if it's not on there already. But those ones that I just called out, the others seem to be doing fine right now, but those ones need immediate attention. If you can get together, if you just want to get involved in this and talk to our team, just contact us and our team will contact you back and talk about, you know, whether you want to be a host or whether you what you'd like to do, because we need people to go in and collect tickets and be part of the family. So, but on the whole, everybody's doing a fantastic job. It's just those theatres needing a boost. Very, very exciting. And it's a great little film. I've just watched it. It's very important.
It's a great film. It's a great film. It's really important information. I
think what you'll think when you come out of there, the average person will have no idea that our military members were, and to an extent still are, being treated as lab rats. And that's their words, not mine. That's what comes across more than anything else. It's shocking. But there's good news in it as well. So there's that. Anyway, Mary, have a lovely time out there.
Thank you, Polly. See you next week.
There's very good reason to understand that the Earth is very similar to one of the many types of meteorites that land on Earth. But which one? How do you tell? Well, I figured out a way to tell. And that is by ratios of mass. If you take one common element, say iron, and you make ratios of mass in meteorites, and you make ratios of mass in the parts of the Earth, then you can find the one that matches. And it's very, very significant, and it led to a whole series of discoveries that people hadn't expected. So I use the same technique to find out what's being sprayed in the air above us, the main constituent. You're exposed to a lot of false information. Some of the false information were a release of patents for putting in the air, and the elements mentioned, for example, was aluminum, barium, strontium.
Right.
So people, concerned citizens would capture rainwater after spraying, and most of them would just have it analyzed at a commercial laboratory and only request aluminum.
Right.
Some would request both aluminum and barium.
Mm-hmm.
A few would request aluminum, barium, and strontium. Well, with those three elements, you can make ratios.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did is I took the data that had been posted, the chemical analyses for those three elements in rainwater, and I compared them to laboratory experiments on coal fly ash. Now, when coal is burned industrially, the heavy ash settles and the light ash goes up with the smoke.
Right.
And it used to go out of the smokestacks, but it is so toxic that in Western nations it was trapped. It's so toxic that it was trapped, but I suspected that was what was being sprayed.
Because the ratio was similar to what you were seeing in the rainwater?
Oh yeah, there's some Spanish investigators who made very extensive studies of like 21 different coal ash samples,
Right.
measuring the 38 elements. They would put 100 grams of coal fly ash in 2 liters of distilled water for 24 hours. and then measure how much came out of the coal fly ash and into the water. That's the real difference. If in the samples of rainwater, something was being dissolved in it, it's not simply aluminum or barium or strontium, it's salt, the ions of those substances. And coal fly ash forms in the hot gases above the coal burner. And so it's an alien environment. And so when it cools and it's trapped, it's sequestered, and you put it in water, some of those substances dissolve out. Unlike most dirt, if you take simply a handful of dirt, you won't dissolve any particular amount of those things out. And aluminum and barium and strontium were among the elements that the Spanish investigators had found. So I compared those ratios, and lo and behold, they matched very closely. So I published the first paper in the scientific literature in Current Science. That's a journal published by the Indian Academy of Sciences.
Right.
And peer-reviewed, published. And as soon as that was out, the editor got a damning letter from clearly a disinformation agent accusing me of being a chemtrail conspiracy theorist and lying and full of lies. And the editor did the right thing. He asked me to respond in writing, which I did. And he was going to publish my response along with that letter, but the author of that letter would not give him permission to publish it. So my paper was published.
Can you tell us your name?
Michael D. Murphy.
Okay, Michael. And you came here today to tell us about your own experience inside the hospital.
That's correct.
Okay. So let's go back to the beginning. COVID's happening. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking at that time?
Well, I knew what was going on, and although I figured it'd be relatively easy to get ivermectin, turned out not to be so. So I went to my regular doctor, and he's a very good doctor, but he goes, "Oh, you've got a prostate infection." And I said, "No, I don't. Didn't have a cough. I was running a fever. I was basically just getting run down every day for about 4 days." And when I left his office, he goes, "Well, you probably don't need to get tested for COVID." So I went to go sign up to get tested for COVID, and there's a line out the door, so I was going to go back the next day. Well, that night when I tried to go to sleep, I started jerking, and I said, "Uh-oh, I know what's going on here." So I had a little oximeter, and I checked some oxygen, and it was down at around 90 and below 90. So I went to the ER, which was probably my first mistake, and they left me on a gurney for 8 hours. So here I was not getting any sleep at all. And finally,
For 8 hours, you're left on a gurney.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whenever you got into the hospital, did anybody ask you if you were vaccinated or not?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Were you vaccinated?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Continue on. So you're on the gurney for 8 hours. Then what happened?
And they had me on 2 liters of oxygen, and by the time I got in the room, this was on a Sunday. By the time I got in the room, I was just worn out. I took a nap, and tried to take a nap, and so they'd come in every morning and draw blood from me, and they told me I was gonna get out in like 2 or 3 days, and then they gave me remdesivir, and the next thing I know, they're hauling me in to get a CAT scan, and they said, "Well, you've got double viral pneumonia now." And I was thinking, okay, what'd y'all do to my kidneys? Because normally I ask questions like, when they started giving me remdesivir, I said, "What is that?" And go, "Oh, it's an antiviral." And so I I was so worn out I didn't even think about researching it myself, because I had my phone with me. And then when I started doing worse, and they put me on the highest flow oxygen, the next step was going to ventilator. And I said, well, I'm not going on the ventilator because got 5% chance of getting off a ventilator. And I found out that if you're on a ventilator, they give you the exact same drugs that they give inmates on death row, So basically, they just put you to sleep permanently. So, my wife and daughter, I called my wife and found out that they told her I wasn't going to get out of the hospital. I wasn't going to be returning home. And
so you, at this point, are you like fully aware? You're awake.
Yeah.
And they're telling your wife.
Yeah. Somehow or another, I found out. I didn't talk to my wife very much. We texted, because I didn't want her I didn't want her to hear how bad I was, and very, very weak. But still had my mental faculties, and I told her I said, get me some ivermectin. She goes, oh no, there's too many side effects. I said, if you ever want to see me again, get it. So she called my regular doctor, who was a no-shot guy, that's the reason I liked him, and he got me the prescription for ivermectin, and she or my daughter put in a pair of socks the drugs and smuggled it into me. So for some reason I waited a day or two to take the stuff, but I started hallucinating one night and I woke up out of it and I said, oh, so I'm going to, at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I took my first dose of ivermectin, and a couple of days later they started reducing my oxygen. So 18 days in the hospital, I lost about 30 pounds, and I won't go into detail what else they did to me, but anyway, I'm just glad to be here. Ivermectin and prayer got me out. So.
Well, if you're willing, whatever you want to talk about, because a lot of people describe their experiences. It's sad for the family members who are on the outside who have no idea what's happening. And sometimes their family member passes away and they never really knew how that person was treated.
That's right.
But you being someone in that situation, if there's anything you'd like to share, some people talked about not being given food, not being given water, not being groomed, not allowed basic care.
Well, the first 2 days I did take a shower, but I was awful. It was a chore to even give myself a shower. And after that, I was pretty much bedridden, couldn't sit up, and they weren't giving me a breathing treatment. I kept asking for, because I'd heard budesonide was turning people around. They would not give me a breathing treatment until I threatened to call a lawyer. And I think at 1:30 in the morning, I finally got a breathing treatment. And but yeah, most of the nurses that I came in contact with were, I guess, contract nurses that were traveling nurses, because they were short-handed. They were being overwhelmed by the number of cases, and I can tell you, I only had one nurse at the very beginning that I could tell she cared, and she even went to extra steps to make sure that I knew what was going on. And she even brought a monitor in there that I can monitor my oxygen levels, the first couple of days. So, but the response time was very poor. There's a guy in the room beside me. I could hear him screaming through the walls, "Help! Help! Help!" So I kept calling the nurse's desk to say, "Y'all need to come and help this guy." Well, 45 minutes later, they showed up, and it's almost like they were either following protocol to let people get worse, or they just didn't have enough help, or they just didn't care. So I like to think it was because they didn't have enough help, but fortunately I knew enough to take care of myself. The high flow of oxygen, they had the highest flow of oxygen that they had me on was basically drying up my nose, and I was getting blood clots in my nose, but I knew how to get them out because I'd brought my little bottle of colloidal silver with me before I got to the hospital. So I was able, and I thought, dang, how can people breathe if they got clots in their nose and they got the oxygen in their nose? So
And what about your daughter and your wife? Were they ever allowed to come see you?
No.
Or
No.
what was that like being?
My daughter and my sister, they would stand outside the hospital praying. And Christmas Eve, I was looking out the window. All I could see was concrete and antennas and snow, you know. And I got thinking, well, this might be the last snow I ever see. But and then after I took ivermectin, things started getting better. And I didn't eat for a week because I just didn't have an appetite. And then I started getting my appetite back, and I started calling for extra food, which didn't come. So my daughter would bring me food, and they allowed the food to come in from the outside, which I was surprised. But I wouldn't wish this on anybody, because you know you expect for the hospital to make sure they're do no harm. That's the Hippocratic oath, you know. And they've known for years that remdesivir shuts down the kidneys and hurts the liver. So they told me, the one nurse did come in, well, you need to lay on your stomach do these breathing exercises. So I would lay on my stomach for hours, do these breathing exercises, and just to keep from getting pneumonia. But I did get discharged out of the hospital with pneumonia, so I was glad to get out. And once I got home, I started treating myself, because I was on 2 rounds of antibiotics, and it would do good for a while, but then it'd come back. So I took colloidal silver and put it in a nebulizer and started breathing that. So a day later, it was gone.
Yeah, so what did that look like? Getting discharged from the hospital, going home?
Well, I looked like a Auschwitz survivor, you know. I probably hadn't got. I did get one sponge bath, I think, towards the last couple of days I was there, but I didn't even care about taking a bath or taking a shower, because I couldn't get up and get in the shower in the first place, and I knew that other people needed probably more help than I did, so I just didn't shave, so looked pretty rough. Yeah.
And then getting home.
You may want to cut this part out, but I came out of it.
We're live.
Oh. Okay, good.
So maybe you can tell me after.
Yeah, I'll tell you after.
But I was going to say, not that Children's Health Defense gives medical advice, nor are you, but maybe can you go back and share some of the things you did that helped you get better at home?
Well, I did continue with the breathing treatment, budesonide, because a couple times during the middle of the night, I woke up and I was getting very, very congested, hard to breathe. And I came out of the hospital on 3 liters of oxygen, but I actually needed more than 4, because when I finally got the oxygen generator delivered to me at midnight, I got out of the hospital about 6:30, and I finally got an extra tank delivered to me at midnight, because I thought I was going to go back in the ER, because they sent me out with a script for 3 liters, but I actually needed 4 or 4 plus. And so I had it on 5 for that first night. And I remember laying in bed. I thought I was going to die in my sleep, for lack of oxygen, So strangely enough, PTSD hit me about 2 or 3 months after that. And so I came out of the hospital. I did the budesonide, went to see my pulmonologist. They had me do a sleep study, and I was off sleeping pills. I was off oxygen for about 3 nights in a row, and I was feeling good. And my pulmonologist wants me to do a in-home sleep study, which I did. And next thing I know, when I put the thing on my finger and on my wrist, it's like I had flashbacks or something, and I couldn't go to sleep. And then I did go to sleep finally. I can't remember the sleeping pill I took. It'll come to me in a minute, but the test came back, and they said, "Oh, your oxygen's dropping off. You need to go back on oxygen." And so I tried it for a week or 2, and then I convinced myself I didn't need it, so I quit taking it. And so I was doing okay for about two months after let's see, this is, I got out last of December 2020. January and February, I was on oxygen. I weaned myself off of it finally. Had to sleep study in March. And then, for whatever reason, April, PTSD, high anxiety came on me. It got so bad I couldn't even put my head on a pillow. And I figured it was long COVID effects, because I talked to doctors about it, and they said, "Oh yeah, you're not the only one. We were seeing this." And so to continue on, I did the budesonide breathing treatment, and I was still taking the antibiotic. I was on my second round. It would get better, and then it'd come back after I quit taking the antibiotic. And I said, well, enough of this, because the antibiotics are not good to take long term. So I put like maybe 1 milliliter of colloidal silver in the little nebulizer, and I'd breathe through my nose and my mouth like 2 or 3 times a day that first day, and then the next day I noticed the wheezing was gone. So so I'd considered that was a in-home remedy that was very useful. But
did you take anything like vitamin C or?
Oh yeah, I was taking vitamin C, zinc, quercetin, vitamin D3, of course all the B vitamins. Those are the main ones. And because I knew enough about quercetin helps push the zinc into the cells, which keeps the COVID thing out of your cells. So still doing it. And I'm taking ivermectin once a week to this day.
Just to be safe.
Yeah, and there's a doctor, Dr. Stella Emanuel, down in Texas. She takes it. She's been taking it for every week for 3 years. And people can go to her website and they can get HCQ and ivermectin and all this other stuff that'll help with whatever the latest thing going is around. So
a lot of these people in here died from the hospital protocols, and so it makes us so happy to see you here with us. But what do you think about what happened to them? And as someone who can in some ways be a voice for them, what would you tell someone who maybe just thought, all these people are just dying of COVID, and didn't realize maybe it was something more to it than that?
Well, I would suggest if they go to the hospital, make sure their doctor has visiting privileges at that hospital, because I think your family physician will care more about your well-being than the hospital physicians. That it's come out that the hospitals get a chunk of change when you get admitted with COVID after the test comes back positive, and who knows if it's a positive or false positive, because these swabs come from China, and I've heard reports of these swabs even being contaminated, and then after you get admitted, if you go on remdesivir, they put you on remdesivir, they get another chunk of change. If you go on the ventilator, they get another chunk of change, and if you die, that's just business. The way I look at it now is that you need to be your own physician, and I have to give credit to the Lord for turning me around too. I can't just give the whole accolades to ivermectin, although it's a great drug. It won the Nobel Prize, and it's even got some other benefits other than combating COVID. But yeah, I was praying every day, had people praying for me, and the strange thing is I never was scared. I made my peace, and I was going to continue to battle, and hospital food's not anything to rely on for your sustenance. So I'm glad my daughter was making me chicken soup, and she was putting glutathione. That's another thing I was taking too, glutathione. She was putting in that because it helps protect the lungs. Because one of the after effects of having COVID and being in the hospital so long is I started having memory problems, and of course that was another long COVID effect. It's gotten better, been taking coconut oil and things like that.
Okay. Well, fortunately, you did not get to sign your name on the bus. But thank you for coming.